the frozen splendor of St. Petersburg's Winter Palace, amid the Tsar's lavish winter ball, a cursed Fabergé egg gleams as Prince Alexei unveils it, only for a dagger to pierce his heart at midnight. Enter Miss Jane Marple, the sharp-eyed spinster from quiet Danby Mead, whose village wisdom is about to unravel royal intrigue. As a second threat emerges, jewel forgeries surface, and whispers of Bolshevik plots echo through gilded halls. Marple exposes a web of greed, revenge, and stolen identities. With suspects ranging from a fiery countess with jealous eyes to a scarred colonel drowning in debt and a revolutionary widow, can she unmask the killer before the snow melts? Or will vengeance claim another victim? Dive into Murder at the Winter Palace, a thrilling mystery where every glance deceives, and no one is who they seem. Chapter 1. An Invitation from Afar. The village of Danby Mead lay wrapped in the gentle hush of an English autumn, its thatched cottages glowing like honey in the slanting sunlight. At the end of Church Lane, in a low-beamed house with roses still blooming against the walls, Miss Jane Marple sat by her bay window. Her knitting needles moved with the precision of a metronome, coaxing a pale blue shawl from skeins of Shetland wool. At 72, she was a picture of placid contentment. Rosy cheeks framed by soft white hair, still blue eyes that missed nothing, and a smile as mild as the cider served at the parish fete. Rufus, her sleek black cat, sprawled across the window seat, tail twitching lazily at the flutter of a goldfinch beyond the panes. "Such a peaceful morning, Rufus," Miss Marple murmured, her voice soft as the rustle of fallen leaves. No gossip worth the telling, since Mrs. Price's new housemaid ran off with the gardener. The clock on the mantel struck 11, when Mary, her sturdy companion, entered with the post on a silver tray. "Only one today, miss. From London, by the look of the stamp, though ever so foreign feeling." Miss Marple laid down her needles and took the envelope. It was heavy vellum, sealed with crimson wax impressed by a double-headed eagle. Her brows lifted slightly. "Russian, if I'm not mistaken. How very singular." With a silver paper knife, she slit it open. The single sheet crackled as she unfolded it, revealing an elegant script in violet ink. "Dearest Jane, I write in haste from the very heart of the Winter Palace, St. Petersburg, where I am guest of honor at the Tsar's winter ball. The air hums with excitement, and I confess something darker. A house party of our old London set, Prince Alexei, the Hargreaves brothers, dear Timothy, and that enigmatic Madame Kuznetsova. Whispers of jewel thefts, old feuds, Bolshevik shadows, positively murderous intrigue. Your keen eye for human folly is needed more than ever. Come at once. The Orient Express leaves Victoria Station tomorrow noon. I have booked your compartment. Reply by wire. With fondest urgency, Eleanor Whitby, Miss Marple." Read it twice, her lips pursing in mild surprise. Lady Eleanor Whitby, née Hargreaves, had been a vivacious debutante in Miss Marple's own youth, when Jane West had twirled through London seasons before settling into spinsterhood. They had corresponded fitfully over the years, Eleanor flitting from diplomatic posts to grand tours, while Jane tended Danby Mead's quieter dramas. But Russia, the Winter Palace. "Well, Rufus," she said, stroking the cat's ears, "Eleanor always did lean toward the extravagant. A ball with the Tsar, fancy that, and murderous intrigue. Sounds like the committee meeting when Mrs. Bantry wanted the fete tent in Puce." She rose, crossing to her writing desk, and penned a brief wire. "Arriving Victoria noon. Delighted, Jane Marple." Mary dispatched it to the post office on her bicycle, returning with news that set the village humming. By tea time, the news had spread. Miss Marple off to Russia. Packing proved a brisk affair. Mary folded lavender silks and cashmere shawls into the old leather trunk, adding woolen stockings against the northern chill, and a bottle of Dr. Gregg's tonic for any tummy upsets, miss. Miss Marple selected her favourite brooch, a pearl cluster from her mother, and a sturdy umbrella. At 10:30 she telephoned her nephew, Raymond West, the novelist, from the Vicarage Exchange. "Aunt Jane, Russia? Whatever for?" His voice crackled with astonishment. "Eleanor's invitation, dear. A house party at the Tsar's palace. She hints at complications." "Complications? Dash it, Aunt. That's code for trouble. Shall I come?" No, Raymond. I shall manage. Give my love to Joyce." She rang off, smiling at his sputtered protests. The trap from the Red Lion rattled up at dawn, trunk lashed to the rear. Villagers waved from cottage doors, Mrs. Hodges with a basket of scones, the vicar tipping his hat. "Mind the wolves, Miss Marple," called cheeky young Tom Price. She laughed a silvery sound. "Wolves indeed! It's people one must watch." London swallowed her by midday. Victoria Station buzzed with porters and trunks, the air sharp with coal smoke. The Orient Express loomed on track 3, its blue carriages gleaming like a sapphire serpent. A conductor in gold braid escorted her aboard, stowing her trunk in compartment 14. As the guard's whistle pierced the din, Miss Marple settled by the window, needles resuming their click. The train jolted forward, London fading into Kent's green folds. Snow-dusted fields soon replaced the orchards, Europe rushing toward the frozen east. Quite the adventure, she reflected, tucking the letter into her bag. Though I dare say it's all fuss about nothing. Human nature doesn't change with the scenery. Greed's the same in a palace as a parlour. Rufus would miss her, but Danby Mead would wait. The rails sang onward, carrying Miss Marple into the glittering unknown. Chapter 2. The Journey East. The Orient Express gathered speed as it cleaved through the Kentish orchards, their branches heavy with the first nips of frost. Miss Marple's compartment was a haven of polished mahogany and velvet upholstery, the kind of luxury that made one forget the draughty third-class carriages of her younger days. She had just resumed her knitting, a border of delicate eyelets for the shawl, when a sharp rap sounded at the door. "Enter," she called mildly. The panel slid open to reveal a stout lady in a mink-trimmed coat, her face powder-pale, and eyes bright with the zeal of the inveterate traveller. "Mrs. Van Hopper," she announced, extending a gloved hand bedecked with diamonds. "From Boston, Massachusetts. The company wired me a companion for the journey. Saves on fares, you know. Mind if I settle in?" "Not at all," replied Miss Marple graciously, shifting her basket to make room. "Jane Marple, of Danby Mead. A pleasure." Mrs. Van Hopper plumped down opposite, fanning herself with a programme. "Danby Mead. Never heard of it. Sounds like one of those quaint English holes in the wall. I'm bound for St. Petersburg myself. Winter Palace, no less. The Tsar's ball. Jewels like you wouldn't believe, my dear. Why, I've heard the Romanovs' collection could ransom a kingdom." Miss Marple smiled, her needles clicking on. "So I've read. The Fabergé eggs alone are marvels." "Marvels? Marvels with murders attached. 3 owners of that Romanov star egg dropped dead. Poison, jewels, the lot. And now Prince Alexei's got it. Exiled royalty, they say. Handsome as sin, but tangled with Bolsheviks. My husband, rest his soul, Always said Russia was a powder keg. You going for the ball too?" "Indeed," said Miss Marple. "An old friend, Lady Eleanor Whitby, has invited me to her house party there." "Whitby? The diplomat's widow?" "Oh, her. She's in all of the society columns, sable cloaks and sapphire tiaras. But mark my words, Jane. Mind if I call you Jane? There's trouble brewing. Spies in the corridors, jewels vanishing like smoke. I saw it in Vienna last month. A countess stabbed over a necklace. Same old story, greed and glamour." Miss Marple nodded thoughtfully. "Human nature does repeat itself, doesn't it? Like the fuss over Mrs. Phipps's emerald brooch at our village fete. Vanished in plain sight, only to turn up in the vicar's greenhouse." Mrs. Van Hopper guffawed, slapping her knee. "You English! Always with your little scandals. Tell me more. I adore a good yarn." The afternoon wore on in a torrent of anecdotes. Mrs. Van Hopper regaled her with tales of Newport balls and Monte Carlo scandals, while the train plunged into the gathering dusk. At Calais, porters swarmed aboard with hampers of foie gras and Bordeaux, and the ladies dined in the restaurant car amid crystal and linen. Miss Marple sipped her soup, listening as her companion dissected the guest list. Prince Alexei, dark brooding type, engaged to that Petrova woman, fiery Russian, eyes like coals. Then there's Colonel Hargreaves, Lady Eleanor's brother, scarred from the Boer War. Gambler, they whisper. And young Blackwood, her nephew, wild as they come, always in debt. Oh, and Madame Kuznetsova, widow of some general, thick with revolutionaries, dangerous lot. "Fascinating," murmured Miss Marple, buttering a roll. "Old feuds do linger, like ivy on a wall." By nightfall, they rattled through the Ardennes, snowflakes beginning to speckle the panes. Mrs. Van Hopper retired to her berth with a hot water bottle snoring lustily, while Miss Marple lay wakeful, pondering the letter's ominous hint. Murderous intrigue. It reminded her of the time Dr. Haydock's patients had nearly come to blows over a disputed will, motives as timeless as the hills. Dawn broke over the Carpathians, their peaks capped in virgin white. The train laboured upward, steam pluming like dragon's breath. At the border, mustachioed officials stamped passports with gruff efficiency, peering curiously at Miss Marple's English roses. "For Tsar?" one grunted. "For a ball?" she replied sweetly. "How kind of you to ask." They descended into Vienna by mid-morning, the station a whirl of hansom cabs and flower sellers. As porters wrestled with her trunk, a familiar voice boomed across the platform. "Jane! By Jove, you're a sight for sore eyes!" Sir Henry Clithering, late of Scotland Yard, strode toward her, bull-necked, ruddy-faced, his moustache bristling like a walrus's. He swept off his hat, revealing a bald pate gleaming under the gas lamps. "Got your compartment number from the purser. Eleanor wired me too. Dashed urgent. Join me for coffee." "Delighted, Henry," she said, taking his arm. Mrs. Van Hopper, trailing behind, raised penciled brows. "An old beau, Jane? How scandalous!" Sir Henry guffawed as they settled in the station buffet, ordering strudel and Kaffee mit Schlag. "Not a beau, madam. Strictly professional admiration. Miss Marple here's solved more cases than I've had hot dinners. That business with the vicar's poison pen, masterful." Mrs. Van Hopper's eyes widened. "You're that Miss Marple, the village sleuth. Why, I read about you in the Times. Tell all." Miss Marple waved a modest hand. "Mere observation, my dear. People are much alike. Jealousy in St. Petersburg or Danby Mead, it's all one." Sir Henry leaned in, voice lowering. Eleanor's telegram was cryptic. Old set reunited, tensions high, Prince's egg cursed, Bolshevik whispers. Bring your best, Henry and Jane. Sounds like a powder keg, eh? I've a nose for it. 20 years chasing anarchists. Indeed, said Miss Marple. And who comprises this old set? He ticked them off on sausage-like fingers. Prince Alexei Romanov, Tsar's cousin, exiled after Otto V revolution. Engaged to Countess Irina Petrova. Beauty with a temper, covets his jewels. Colonel Geoffrey, Hargreaves, Eleanor's brother, bluff soldier but deep in cards. Lord Timothy Blackwood, her nephew, 25, flighty as a sparrow, always borrowing. Madame Olga Kuznetsova, enigmatic widow, rumoured red, and Eleanor herself, our hostess, sharp as a tack. Mrs. Van Hopper shivered dramatically. Sounds like a nest of vipers. That egg, the Romanov star, it's said to be cursed. First owner poisoned in 98, second duelled in 02, third fell from a balcony last year. Prince Alexei plans to unveil it at the ball, if he lives that long. Sir Henry grunted. Superstition, but grudges, plenty. Hargreaves lost a fortune to Alexei at baccarat years back. Timothy's wild, might have pawned family heirlooms. And Olga, her husband, was shot for Tsarist spying. Revolution's in the air, Jane. Felt it in Paris last week. Posters everywhere. Miss Marple sipped her coffee. Eyes distant. Grudges fester, Henry, like the feud between the Prices and the Comptons over that boundary hedge. Took a murder to uproot it. The whistle shrilled, summoning them aboard. Mrs. Van Hopper commandeered the window seat, chattering of Viennese waltzes, while Sir Henry took the corridor, promising bridge later. The train surged eastward, crossing the Danube's icy flood into Hungary's endless plains. Snow lay thick now, muffling the world in white. Lunch was paprika chicken and Tokay wine. Miss Marple ate sparingly, her mind weaving threads. By Bucharest, twilight fell and the diners thinned. Sir Henry joined them, dealing hands of whist amid cigar smoke. Your lead, Jane. She trumped neatly, smiling. Always the ace of spades, Henry, like spotting the guilty heart. Mrs. Van Hopper trilled laughter, but her eyes darted nervously as the train groaned through the Balkans. Rumours swirled in the corridor. A bomb scare in Sofia. Cossack patrols ahead. Bolsheviks, hissed a Swedish banker. Sir Henry snorted, Fiddlesticks, but keep your wits, ladies. Night deepened over the steppes, stars pricking the velvet sky. Miss Marple retired early, the rhythm of wheels lulling her. Yet sleep brought dreams. Gilded halls and shadowed daggers, a ruby egg pulsing like a heart. Morning light revealed Warsaw's spires, then Minsk's frozen forests. The air grew sharper, breath fogging the glass. At a wayside halt, vendors hawked kvass and smoked fish. Miss Marple bought a bag of sunflower seeds for Rufus, in memory. By noon the train skirted the Polish marshes, Russia's border looming. Customs at Vitebsk was a farce of fur-hatted officers, sniffing trunks for contraband. Jewels? Barked one at Sir Henry. Only my reputation, he retorted. Miss Marple's turn. The man eyed her brooch. English lady, for Tsar? For friends, she said serenely. He waved her through. The final leg unfurled across the endless Russian plain. Birches like white sentinels. Wolves' howls faint on the wind. Mrs. Van Hopper napped, sir. Henry paced, recounting a Riga smuggling ring. Diamonds in cigarette cases. Same as your egg plot, eh? Perhaps, mused Miss Marple. Though I fancy it's personal. A lover's quarrel or a brother's debt? Dusk painted the sky crimson as the Neva's lights twinkled ahead. The train slowed, brakes hissing, into St. Petersburg's Baltic station, a cavern of marble and gaslight. Porters swarmed. Miss Marple gathered her things, heart quickening. Outside, a crisp wind whipped snow from the roofs. 3 troika sleighs waited, harness bells jingling like silver coins, their horses stim-plumed in the cold. A footman in emerald livery bowed low. "Miss Marple, Sir Henry, for Winter Palace, Lady Eleanor's party." Mrs. Van Hopper squealed, "Oh, Jane, it's real." They climbed in, robes of sable drawn over knees. The lead sleigh bore Sir Henry and Miss Marple. Behind, Mrs. Van Hopper with the others. Whips cracked, and they flew through torchlit streets, onions' domes gleaming turquoise and gold, the Admiralty spire piercing the stars. Canals lay frozen, skaters whirling like sprites. The Winter Palace rose ahead, a colossus of green and white, columns vast as temples, windows ablaze with 1,000 candles. Gates swung wide, guards presenting sabres. The sleigh crunched to a halt in the courtyard, where fountains played frozen cascades. A majordomo descended the steps, silver chain glinting. "Welcome, honoured guests, the Malachite Hall awaits." Sir Henry handed Miss Marple down. "Ready for the fray, Jane?" She gazed up at the palace's fairy-tale splendour, snowflakes melting on her cheeks. "Quite ready, Henry. It's a grand stage, but the play's the same everywhere. Only the costumes change." The doors parted, spilling golden light. The adventure had truly begun. Chapter 3. The Guests Assemble. The heavy doors of the Winter Palace swung inward with a whisper of oiled hinges, releasing a wave of warmth scented with beeswax polish and hothouse lilies. Miss Marple stepped across the threshold into the Malachite Hall, her sturdy shoes sinking into a carpet woven with threads of gold. Columns of green malachite soared to a ceiling frescoed with cherubs and clouds, while crystal chandeliers dripped light like molten diamonds. It was a room to take the breath, a cathedral of opulence where even the air seemed gilded. Sir Henry paused beside her, tugging at his cravat. "By Jove, Jane, makes Buckingham look like a cottage." From the corridor behind, Mrs. Van Hopper bustled in, her eyes saucer-wide. "Jane Marple, I'm in paradise. Look at those walls, green as emeralds, and the Tsar's own roof." A tall figure descended the curving staircase, sable cloak swirling about her shoulders like a midnight tide. Lady Eleanor Whitby was a vision of poised elegance, silver hair coiled high, a necklace of cabochon sapphires nestling at her throat, and eyes, vivid blue as the never in summer, that lit with genuine delight. At 58, she carried her years like a queen, her laughter still the same silvery peal Miss Marple remembered from London balls 3 decades past. "Jane, my dearest Jane." Eleanor swept forward, enveloping her in a rustle of silk and perfume. "You're here at last, and Sir Henry. Such a comfort to see your solid English face. Come, come, the others await in the arabesque salon. Dinner in half an hour." She turned to Mrs. Van Hopper with a gracious nod. "And you, madam? A fellow traveller?" "Mrs. Van Hopper at your service," trilled the American, curtsying awkwardly. "Overwhelmed, Lady Eleanor. This palace, it's straight from the Arabian Nights." Eleanor's smile flickered. "Quite so, but mind the gins, they bite." She linked arms with Miss Marple, leading the way down a corridor lined with portraits of stern Romanovs. "I feared you'd miss the train, Jane. The snows were wicked. Tell me, did Raymond send his love?" "He did, and his usual fuss." Don't tangle with anarchists, Aunt, he wired. Eleanor laughed. Wise boy, though anarchists are the least of it tonight. The arabesque salon opened before them, a chamber of azure walls painted with Persian motifs, divans heaped with cashmere cushions, and a fire roaring in a porphyry grate. Crystal decanters winked on a sideboard, and a string quartet murmured Mendelssohn in the corner. 5 figures rose as they entered, conversation dying like a snuffed candle. Dear guests, Eleanor announced, Miss Jane Marple of Danby Mead, my oldest friend and sharpest confidant. Sir Henry Clitherin, late of Scotland Yard, whose exploits you've all read, and Mrs. Van Hopper, a delightful addition from the train. Miss Marple inclined her head, taking in each face with the quiet scrutiny of a gardener noting blight on a rose. Nearest the fire stood Prince Alexei Romanov, a man of 40 with the Romanov stamp, high cheekbones, dark curls touched with silver, and eyes like stormy Baltic waves. His uniform glittered with orders, but his mouth held a cynical twist. He bowed low, kissing Miss Marple's hand. Enchanted, mademoiselle. Russia welcomes those who see beyond the glitter. Delighted, your highness, she replied softly, though I fancy glitter hides more than it reveals. Beside him, Countess Irina Petrova clung to his arm, a flame-haired beauty of 30, her gown of crimson velvet slashed with ermine, emeralds at her ears flashing green fire. Her lips curved in a smile that didn't reach her kohl-rimmed eyes. Miss Marple, the English voyante, Prince Alexei has told me of your talents. Do you read tea leaves or merely hearts? Merely people, Countess, said Miss Marple mildly. They're simpler to fathom. Across the room loomed Colonel Geoffrey Hargreaves, Lady Eleanor's brother. A bear of a man, 55, with a face weathered by South African suns and a livid scar snaking from temple to jaw. His mess jacket strained over broad shoulders, and a monocle dangled from his lapel. He saluted Sir Henry with a bluff grin. Clitherin, old top, haven't seen you since Simla. And Miss Marple, Eleanor's tales don't do you justice. Join me in a peg. With pleasure, Colonel, she said, accepting a whisky with soda. His hand trembled slightly as he poured. Nerves or something stronger? Young Lord Timothy Blackwood sprawled on a divan, all golden curls and 25 years of careless charm. Nephew to Eleanor, he wore a velvet smoking jacket askew, a cigarette dangling from boyish lips. Aunt Jane's friend, smashing. I'm Tim, call me Tim. Ever been to Russia before? Beastly cold, but the caviar's divine. Have some. He waved a blinny heaped with black pearls. Thank you, no, Miss Marple smiled. I've a weak spot for English muffins. His eyes darted to the clock, restless, like a colt in a stall. Last, by the window, stood Madame Olga Kuznetsova, a widow of indeterminate age, perhaps 45, swathed in black bombazine, unrelieved by a single jewel. Her face was a pale oval, framed by raven hair drawn severely back, and her gaze, dark, unblinking, held the intensity of a hawk. She extended a gloved hand. Miss Marple, I am Olga. The prince speaks highly of your village wisdom. In Russia, we value such simplicity. Her English was flawless, laced with a faint hiss. Simplicity uncovers truth, madame, replied Miss Marple, as a broom sweeps clean. Sir Henry clapped his hands. Right-ho! Drinks all round. Eleanor, what's the drill for this ball of yours? Eleanor settled on a divan, drawing Miss Marple beside her. Tomorrow night, the Nicholas Hall. The Tsar attends, God willing. Prince Alexei unveils the Romanov star at midnight. A Fabergé egg, you know, fresh from the vaults, priceless, but enough chatter. The bell for dinner. They process to the portrait gallery, a vast chamber where Tsars and Tsarinas glared from canvases by Levitsky and Vigée-Lebrun. A mahogany table groaned under silver epergnes, sterlet soup steaming in tureens, sterlet blinis folded like golden envelopes, roast swan with lingonberries, and a pyramid of iced petits fours. Footmen in cloth of gold poured Kuibyshev champagne, its bubbles rising like stars. Miss Marple found herself between Colonel Hargreaves and Lord Timothy, with Irina opposite. The meal began with a fanfare of balalaikas. "To His Imperial Majesty," toasted the prince, glass raised. "And to absent friends," added Eleanor, her eyes flickering to Miss Marple. Conversation flowed like the wine. Colonel Hargreaves carved the swan with gusto. "Deuced fine bird, eh? Reminds me of Omdurman. Hot work, but the trophies. Alexei, you'd have loved it, bayonets and all." The prince's lip curled. "War is for peasants, Geoffrey. Jewels endure." Irina leaned forward, emeralds swinging. "Speaking of which, darling the star, tell them of the curse." Timothy guffawed, spilling champagne. "Curse? Rot! It's just bad luck for cads. First owner poisoned by his valet, greedy blighter. Second, duelled over a mistress. Third, plummeted from a Petrograd balcony, all trying to sell it abroad." Olga's fork paused mid-air. "The egg belongs to Russia. Selling it is treason." Her voice was silk over steel. Sir Henry chuckled. "Treason or not, it's a fortune. What's the tale, Alexei? How'd you come by it?" The prince swirled his glass, eyes distant. "A family secret. Cousin Nicholas entrusted it to me after the 05 troubles. Keep it safe," he said. "Now, with Bolshevik dogs snapping, insurance, perhaps, for exile." Hargreaves snorted. "Insurance? More like a ticket to Monte Carlo. Remember that baccarat game in Biarritz, Alexei? You fleeced me proper. 20,000 francs. "Debts between gentlemen," murmured the prince. Timothy piped up, cheeks flushed. "I say, Uncle Jeff, didn't you pawn Aunt Ellen's tiara once, for horses?" "Hold your tongue, boy," growled the colonel, scar whitening. Eleanor intervened smoothly. "Timothy, pass the caviar. Jane, try the sterlet. It melts like snow." Miss Marple spooned a delicate portion, observing. Irina toyed with her necklace, gaze fixed on the prince's signet ring. Olga ate sparingly, her eyes tracing the footman's movements. Timothy fidgeted, dropping a napkin. Hargreaves drained his glass, refilling with unsteady hand. As coffee arrived, black scalding in samovars, the talk turned to the ball. "Waltzes till dawn," crowed Mrs. Van Hopper. "And the egg on its pedestal, ruby eyes glowing. Glowing with blood," whispered Irina theatrically. Olga rose abruptly. "Excuse me, the air grows close." She glided out, a shadow among splendours. Eleanor caught Miss Marple's eye, mouthing soon. The quartet struck up a polonaise. Couples drifted to the floor. Sir Henry partnered Mrs. Van Hopper, who squealed at each twirl. Timothy begged Irina, who accepted with a pout. Hargreaves lumbered off to the billiard room. The prince offered Eleanor his arm, leaving Miss Marple by the hearth with a book of Pushkin. But she watched. Irina stumbled in Timothy's arms, whispering urgently. He nodded, eyes wide. The prince's hand tightened on Eleanor's waist, a possessive grip. Olga reappeared at the door, speaking low to a footman who slipped away. Hargreaves's laughter boomed from afar. Dice, perhaps. "Human nature," murmured Miss Marple to the flames. "Dressed in velvet or homespun, it's the glances that betray. Greed in those emerald eyes, fear in the boy's flush, steel in the widow's stare." Eleanor returned, breathless. "Jane, later, in my boudoir, the truth of it all." "Whenever you're ready, my dear." The clock struck 10. Guests dispersed to chambers escorted by candlelight. Miss Marple's lay in the Tsaritsyn wing, a suite of rose damask, a canopied bed heaped with goose down, and a balcony overlooking the frozen Hermitage gardens. Mary would have clucked at the excess, but Jane unpacked serenely. Lavender gown for tomorrow, pearls restrung, a knock, a maid with hot chocolate and pralines. "Lady Eleanor sends, miss. Sweet dreams," Miss Marple sipped, gazing at the Never's ice. "Dreams indeed, but tomorrow the ball, and whatever shadows dance before the egg." She extinguished the candle. The palace settled into hush, yet in the corridors whispers lingered like smoke. Chapter 4. Whispers in the Corridors. Miss Marple awoke to the silver chime of a porcelain clock, its face framed in lapis lazuli. Dawn filtered through frost-laced windows, painting the rose damask walls in hues of palest pink. She lay a moment, listening to the palace stir. Distant clatter of silver in the kitchens, the muffled stamp of grooms in the stables below. "A new day," she murmured, slipping from the goose-down covers, "and with it, whatever secrets the night has sown." Mary's packing had been thorough. The lavender silk gown hung ready, its bodice embroidered with seed pearls. Miss Marple dressed with care, pinning her mother's brooch at the collar, a simple cluster against the elegance. Breakfast arrived on a wheeled trolley. Black bread with butter curls, pots of apricot jam, and steaming bowls of kasha scented with cinnamon. She ate sparingly by the balcony, watching servants sweep snow from the Hermitage gardens, their breath clouding like ghosts. A note lay tucked beneath the teapot. "Dearest Jane, meet me in the Field Marshal's Hall at 10. Urgent. Eleanor." Miss Marple folded it away, her mind turning to the previous evening's tableau. The prince's guarded smile, Irina's covetous glance at his ring, Olga's abrupt departure, threads in a tapestry yet to form a picture. Like the quilt circle at home, she reflected, every patch tells a tale if one looks close. The Field Marshal's Hall was a gallery of martial glory. Portraits of Suvorov and Kutuzov scowling from gilded frames, suits of armour glinting under crystal domes. Eleanor awaited by a bust of Peter the Great, her morning gown of dove-grey cashmere setting off the sapphires at her ears. "Jane, thank heaven, I slept not a wink, rehearsing speeches for the ball." Miss Marple settled on a velvet bench. "Speeches, or something weightier, my dear?" Eleanor glanced over her shoulder, then leaned close. "Both. The egg. Alexei plans to auction it quietly after the unveiling. Proceeds to fund his escape if revolution flares. But Irina knows. Overheard them quarrelling. She's wild to wed him and claim it all. And Geoffrey, my brother owes Alexei a mountain from that Biarritz game. Timothy's no better. Pawned my emerald bracelet last month for polo ponies." "Debts breed desperation," said Miss Marple gently, "as when young Jenkins stole the church silver for his bookmaker." "Precisely. And, Olga, her husband's death wasn't fever, as they said. Alexei's agents shot him as a spy. She blames the prince, openly, at supper last year in Vienna." Eleanor's fingers twisted her handkerchief. "Then this morning, a footman brought this." She pressed a sealed note into Miss Marple's hand. The paper was cheap, anonymous. The Romanov Star stays in Russia. Sell it and pay. No signature, but the ink smudged like hurried rage. Miss Marple turned it over. Delivered how? To Alexei's door at dawn. He's furious, accuses Olga outright, but she denies it, cool as Siberian ice. A bell tinkled distantly. The summons to the arabesque salon for coffee. Keep this close, Eleanor, and watch Timothy. He fidgets like a fox in a trap. They parted with a squeeze of hands. Miss Marple made her way through labyrinthine corridors. Footfalls hushed on Aubusson rugs. Wall sconces flickered, casting shadows that danced like conspirators. She paused at a niche, holding a malachite vase. Empty, but for a faint scent of tuberose. Odd that. The salon buzzed with morning chatter. Mrs. Van Hopper held court by the samovar, waving a Novoe Vremya. Murder in the streets last night. Bolsheviks shot a policeman right by the Neva. Sir Henry, pipe aglow, snorted from an armchair. Propaganda, madam. The Okrana stirs the pot. Lord Timothy lounged nearby, golden hair tousled, a half-eaten piroshki in hand. Rotten luck! I wanted to see the bridges at dawn. Skating, what? He caught Miss Marple's eye and grinned. Morning, Miss Marple. Coffee, strong as tar, wakes the dead. Thank you, no, she replied, choosing a chaise by the fire. I've a fancy for weak tea. Her gaze swept the room, the prince by the window, scanning a ledger with furrowed brow. Irina beside him, filing her nails to razor points. Colonel Hargreaves at a card table, shuffling patience with jerky motions. Olga alone, stitching blackwork on a collar, her needle flashing like a stiletto. Eleanor entered last, announcing, The ballroom's ready. Inspect the flowers. Guests rose in a rustle, processioning to the Nicholas Hall. Miss Marple walked with Sir Henry, who muttered, Jane, that note Eleanor showed me, blackmail plain, smells like Olga's hand. Or a red herring, she whispered. See Timothy, he lags, whispering to a footman. The Nicholas Hall was a vision transformed. Parquetry floor waxed to mirrors. Galleries festooned with crimson damask, chandeliers swathed in white orchids. At centre stage gleamed a pedestal of Siberian jade, waiting for its treasure. Workmen hammered the final rosette. A maestro tested the orchestra's strings. Irina clapped, emeralds chiming. Perfection! Alexei, darling, imagine the star here, winking at the Tsar. The prince nodded absently, ledger still in pocket. Yes, but security, guards at every door tonight. Hargreaves boomed from the balcony. I'll stand watch myself. Bayonet at the ready. Hey, what? His laugh rang hollow. Miss Marple noted, sweat beading his scar despite the chill. Timothy darted to a side curtain, peeking behind. I say, loose panel here. Anyone could slip through. He demonstrated, vanishing briefly, reappearing with a sheepish grin. Jolly lark for hide and seek. Olga's needle paused. Children play, men die. Coffee followed in the hall. Medovic honeycake and kvass. Conversation eddied around the egg. Mrs. Van Hopper trilled, That curse! Tell us more, Prince. Alexei's eyes darkened. Superstition. But 3 deaths. Victor Orloff, poisoned 98. His butler confessed, then hanged. Count Yuri, duel de dos too. Bullet through the heart over a Cossack dancer. Baroness Lena, last year, suicide from the Moika balcony. All craved foreign gold. Irina shivered theatrically. And you, my love, safe with me? She kissed his cheek, but her hand lingered on his signet. Emerald the size of a robin's egg. Timothy leaned in, voice low but carrying. Heard something last night, past midnight. Prince and Countess in the West Corridor plotting. Smuggle it out in the sleigh. That's what she said. For Paris, I bet. The prince whirled. "Lies! Eavesdropping cub!" "Easy, Alexei," soothed Eleanor. "Timothy's tongue runs ahead of his brain." But damage was done. Olga's lips thinned. Hargreaves's cards scattered. Sir Henry cleared his throat. "Gossip's a spark in dry tinder. Best douse it." Miss Marple sipped her kvass, observing. Young Timothy flushed beet red, eyes darting to Irina, who glared daggers. "Young people talk too much," she said mildly. "It leads to trouble, like when little Elsie Price blabbed about the rector's rheumatism cure." Laughter broke the tension, but undercurrents swirled. As guests dispersed, ladies to fittings, gentlemen to billiards, a footman approached the prince, bowing low. On a salver lay another note, identical to the first. "The Star will never leave Russia." Alexei crumpled it, face ashen. This is war!" He stormed out, Irina trailing with a wail. Olga rose smoothly, threading through the crowd like smoke. Hargreaves cursed, sweeping up cards. Timothy sidled to Miss Marple. "Did I put my foot in it? Aunt Eleanor'll skin me." "Feet in mouths are curable," she replied. "But watch your step tonight, dear boy." The morning dissolved into preparations. Miss Marple returned to her suite, where a maid delivered a costume. Silver tissue over lavender taffeta, with slippers of brocaded silk. "For the ball, miss, from Lady Eleanor." Jane tried it on, twirling before the mirror. "Fit for a czarina," she chuckled, "though I'd not swap it for my tweeds." At luncheon, solitary, in her room, she pondered the notes. Same hand, no. Subtle slant differed. First sloping left, second bold upright. 2 players then. And Timothy's overhearing, stumbled upon, or baited. Afternoon brought a promenade in the winter garden. Hothouse palms and parrots screeching amid lemon trees. Sir Henry joined her on a wrought-iron bench. Jane, that second, note delivered by Ivan the footman. Young chap new since summer. Bolshevik pamphlet in his pocket last week. Interesting, she said, and Hargreaves saw him slip a vial into his waistcoat at coffee. Laudanum. Henry nodded. Pays his debts with dice, not honour. Timothy's worse. Owes bookies in London. A peacock screamed overhead. Miss Marple smiled. Debts, grudges, love, the usual weeds, they'll flower tonight. Dusk fell early, gas jets hissing to life. Maids swarmed chambers with hot irons and powder puffs. Miss Marple dressed slowly, winding pearls about her throat. A knock. Eleanor, resplendent in ivory satin and diamonds. Jane, you're a dream. Ready for the fray? As ever, my dear. They descended arm in arm, the palace thrumming like a hive. From her chamber window, Miss Marple had glimpsed shadows earlier. Hargreaves and Olga in the west corridor, voices low and fierce. You promised the egg for the cause? Olga's hiss carried on the wind. Betrayal means death. Hargreaves's reply was lost, but his scar gleamed white. Now, as trumpets blared from the Nicholas Hall, Miss Marple stepped into the corridor's hush. Footsteps echoed ahead, soft, purposeful. She paused by a tapestry of Ivan the Terrible, peering round. Empty. But voices drifted. Dagger from the armory! Quick work! Fading towards the kitchens. She straightened her shawl. Whispers indeed, but walls have ears, and so do I. The ball awaited. Chapter 5. The ill-fated ball. The Nicholas Hall had been transfigured into a realm of enchantment, where the very air shimmered with the promise of revelry. Miss Marple descended the grand staircase on Lady Eleanor's arm, her lavender taffeta whispering against the marble steps. Above them, crystal chandeliers blazed like captive constellations. their light refracting through prisms to paint rainbows on the walls. The parquetry floor gleamed like a black mirror, reflecting the swirl of uniforms, ball gowns, and the Tsar's own dragoons lining the galleries in scarlet and gold. 100 guests milled below. Russian nobility in sables and tiaras, diplomats from a dozen courts, and the house party at its glittering heart. The orchestra, 50 strong, tuned violins with a shiver of anticipation, while footmen circulated with trays of zakouski, smoked salmon on rye, truffled foie gras, and flutes of pink champagne krug. Eleanor squeezed Jane's hand. "Look at them, Jane. Moths to the flame, and at the centre, the egg." Her voice held a tremor beneath the poise. Miss Marple's gaze settled on the jade pedestal, spotlit by concealed lamps. It stood isolated amid a sea of silk, roped off by crimson velvet. Guards, Okrana men in black tunics, stood sentinel, sabres drawn. "A fine stage," she murmured, "but the play's in the wings." They reached the floor amid a flurry of greetings. Prince Alexei, resplendent in the blue and gold of a Romanov hussar, detached from a cluster of Grand Dukes to bow deeply. "Miss Marple, you outshine the Nevers stars. Permit me?" He offered his arm for the opening polonaise. "With pleasure, Your Highness," she replied, her steps light despite the years. The music swelled, a stately procession led by the Tsar himself, a diminutive figure in white astrakhan, his consort glittering beside him. Miss Marple glided through the figures, noting the prince's tension, his hand rigid on hers, eyes scanning the throng like a hawk over prey. "The notes still trouble you?" she asked softly. He nodded, jaw tight. "Two now, but tonight I unveil it, defy the shadows." Across the floor, Countess Irina whirled in the arms of a Cossack colonel, her crimson gown a whirl of flame. Emeralds at her throat caught the light, mimicking the missing star. Lord Timothy partnered Mrs. Van Hopper, who trilled laughter at each grand rond. The American's diamonds clashed with her enthusiasm. Colonel Hargreaves lumbered through steps with a baroness half his size, his scar livid under powder, a flask peeking from his cuff. Madame Olga, in unrelieved black lace, refused all comers, perched by a column like a raven on a spire. Sir Henry circled with Eleanor, his walrus moustache twitching at some jest. The polonaise yielded to a mazurka, couples fragmenting into pairs. Alexei returned Miss Marple to her alcove, a velvet banquette beneath a tapestry of Catherine the Great, with a grateful smile. "You dance like youth itself. Rest now. The unveiling nears." He vanished into the crush. Jane settled with a glass of eau de sel, her knitting absent but fingers twitching as if at work. From her vantage, the hall unfolded like a map. Irina slipping Alexei a folded card, his curt nod, Timothy excusing himself to the gents, reappearing with flushed cheeks, Hargreaves draining his flask behind a pillar, Olga murmuring to a footman, Ivan, the new one, who nodded and melted away. Busy bees, she thought, and the hive's about to hum. Supper interrupted at 10. A buffet in the adjacent gallery of 1812, tables sagging under roast veprushka in aspic, pelmeni dumplings steaming in sour cream, and a kulabiaka pie the size of a wheel. Miss Marple took a modest plate, cucumber salad and a quail egg, to a corner table with Eleanor and Sir Henry. Mrs. Van Hopper joined, breathless. "Jane, it's divine. The Tsar smiled at me. Me! And that egg! When?" "Midnight," said Eleanor, fanning herself. "Alexei's moment." Timothy slid in beside them, eyes bright. "I say, Uncle Jeff's foxed already. Saw him row with Alexei over cards. Pay up or else, he growled. Sir Henry's brow furrowed. Hush, lad. Walls here have ears and bayonets. Olga passed their table, plate untouched, her gaze locking on Timothy. Eavesdroppers hear more than they bargained for, Miloshka. He flushed crimson. She glided on. Miss Marple speared a Pellman, observing. Irina and Alexei dined apart, heads close, her hand on Eshet, his wrist pleading. Hargreaves ate alone, carving meat with savage strokes. The Tsar's table rang with toasts, to Holy Russia! Glasses clashed, caviar gleamed like black pearls. The orchestra recalled them at 11. A quadrille gave way to Strauss waltzes, the blue Danube swirling guests into a kaleidoscope. Miss Marple watched from her alcove, sipping lime cordial. The hall's heat rose, perfumes mingling with sweat. Fans fluttered like butterflies. She noted discrepancies. Timothy's waistcoat unbuttoned, revealing a bulge. Flask. Irina's necklace askew, one clasp undone. Olga vanished briefly, reappearing with damp gloves. Hargreaves mopped his brow, scar pulsing. At 11:30, trumpets blared. The crowd hushed, parting like the Red Sea. Prince Alexei mounted a dais by the pedestal, a velvet case in hands. Beside him, the Tsar nodded gravely, guards doubled. "Honored guests," Alexei's voice rang clear. "From the vaults of our ancestors, I present the Romanov Star." He snapped the case open, gasps rippled. The Fabergé egg nestled on white satin, platinum shell enameled translucent red, 2 ruby cabochons for eyes, crowned by a diamond starburst. Within, through crystal windows, nestled a miniature sleigh drawn by golden wolves. It glowed, cursed or no, like frozen blood and fire. Applause thundered, chandeliers trembling. The Tsar raised his glass. "To the Empire Eternal!" Couples surged forward for a closer look, a glittering crush. Miss Marple rose slightly, peering over shoulders. There, amid the press, Timothy jostled near the pedestal, hand brushing the rope. Irina clung to Alexei, whispering. He shook her off, eyes on the egg. Hargreaves loomed at the edge, flask to lips. Olga melted into shadow by a curtain. The orchestra struck roses from the south. The waltz resumed, guests eddying back to the floor. But the crush lingered, a vortex around the star. Alexei stepped down, case under arm, guards closing ranks. "Back, please, for the imperial gaze only now." Miss Marple resumed her seat, pulse quickening. The air thickened, cigar smoke, Kypre, and something sharper. Fear, she scanned. Timothy twirling Mrs. Van Hopper, but his eyes on the dais. Irina fanning herself alone. Hargreaves vanished. Then, 12 precise chimes from the ormolu clock. Midnight. A scream shattered the waltz. High, female, raw as a blade. "Bоже moi! Murder!" Chaos erupted. The orchestra faltered to silence. Guests froze, then surged toward the pedestal. Miss Marple rose calmly, threading through petticoats and tails. At the dais, Prince Alexei sprawled face down on the parquetry, dress coat rent across the shoulders. A dagger protruded from his back, its hilt a cluster of emeralds, chased gold, straight from the armory's display. Blood pooled, dark as the egg's enamel, staining the polished wood in a spreading fan. Countess Irina knelt beside him, hands to mouth, keening. Alexei, no genuine horror, or well-rehearsed. She fainted into waiting arms, emeralds scattering like green tears. The Tsar blanched, gesturing sharply. Dragoons sealed every door, sabers out, boots stamping. "No one leaves, search all." From a side entrance burst Inspector Yuri Ivanov of the Okhrana. lean as a rapier, monocle glinting in his left eye, uniform crisp as new snow. "Clear the centre! The Tsar's physician, now!" He knelt by the body, gloved fingers probing the hilt. "Dead! Clean thrust, left to right! Upstairs, all suspects! Hermitage drawing room, immediately!" Soldiers herded the house party through a cordon, guests murmuring in 6 languages. Mrs. Van Hopper clutched Miss Marple's arm, trembling. "Jane! It's the curse! The curse!" Sir Henry steadied Eleanor, who swayed. "Steady, old girl. Jane'll sort it." Timothy gaped, white as curds. I borrowed that dagger. For a prank. Hid it in my room." Hargreaves shouldered through, face ashen. "Good God! Alexei!" Olga stood apart, hands clasped, expression a mask of stone. Ivanov's monocle swept them. "You 8, English party, questioning starts now. The rest, davai!" They mounted to the Hermitage drawing room. A chamber of watered silk and Rembrandts, fire roaring against the chill. Maids brought cognac. A doctor confirmed, instantaneous, artery severed. Ivanov paced, notebook out. "The dagger. Prince's own display. Motives? Speak!" Eleanor whispered to Miss Marple. "Jane, you saw." Miss Marple nodded, eyes on the window's frost. "From the alcove, yes. Just like the fate at Little Danby, only with more fur and fewer jam tarts." She glimpsed it. As the crush peaked, a shadow behind the dais curtain, left arm thrusting swift. The figure melted into waltzers before she could mark face or gown, but the emerald hilt winked once, unmistakable. Ivanov barked, "Countess Irina, first!" The widow sobbed theatrically, but Miss Marple's mind ticked. Angle of blow, direction of weave in the coat's tear. Left-handed, and that curtain, loose panel Timothy had found. Outside, sleigh bells jingled faintly, normalcy mocking murder. Inside, the threads tightened. The killer swirled among them, champagne glass in hand. Chapter 6. The suspects questioned the Hermitage drawing room, with its walls of pale yellow silk and portraits of doe-eyed Tsarinas by Lampi, had been transformed into a chamber of judgment. A long ebony table dominated the centre, flanked by high-backed chairs upholstered in gros de tour. Inspector Yuri Ivanov sat at the head, his monocle catching the firelight like a cold star, a silver samovar steaming beside his notebook. 2 Okrana sergeants flanked the doors, rifles at the ready, their faces impassive as Siberian stone. Outside, the palace had fallen eerily silent. The ball's laughter snuffed like a candle, sleigh bells replaced by the tramp of patrols on the snow. Lady Eleanor presided over a quiche sideboard laden with cognac and limonic cordial, her hands steady despite the pallor beneath her powder. "A restorative for anyone, Inspector, as the shock." Ivanov waved a gloved hand. "Later. First, the truth. You 8 form the English party, all present at the unveiling. One of you wielded that dagger." His gaze raked them. Countess Irina, prostrate on a chaise with salts to her nose. Colonel Hargreaves slumped in an armchair, polishing his monocle with a trembling handkerchief. Lord Timothy, perched on a stool like a schoolboy before the headmaster. Madame Olga, erect by the window, her black lace unmussed. Mrs. Van Hopper fanning herself vigorously. Sir Henry, pipe unlit in his fist, and Miss Marple, quietly knitting a few rows on a lace edging she'd found in her reticule. "The dagger," Ivanov continued, "from Prince Alexei's private armory. Emerald hilt, unique. Stolen this afternoon per the curator. Thrust entered between 3rd and 4th vertebrae. Left-handed blow from behind the dais curtain. Time, 12:03 precisely." He snapped his watch shut. We begin with the Countess. You were his fiancée. Speak." Irina sat up, eyes red-rimmed but artfully so, a lace handkerchief crushed in her fist. She dabbed her cheeks, emeralds at her ears trembling. "Me, kill Alexei. Bozhe-moi, Inspector. I loved him. We were to wed in spring at Zarsko Selo. The egg was to be my dowry, our future in Paris." Her voice cracked, a sob escaping. "But he changed. Yesterday, in our chamber, he raged, 'Irina, enough! I sell the star alone. Your jealousy ruins me.' I begged, pleaded. Then he struck me." She yanked down her bodice, revealing a purple bruise on her shoulder. "See, a monster, yet I forgave. Tonight I danced, then knelt by him when... She dissolved into fresh tears, collapsing against a cushion. Ivanov scribbled, unmoved. "You are right-handed, Countess. Always. My fencing master said so." She extended her arm, fingers splayed, unmistakably dextral. "Noted. Bruise consistent with quarrel. Next, the Colonel." Hargreaves lurched forward, scar livid against his flushed jowls. He poured cognac with a splash, downing it neat. "Dash it all, Ivanov! Murder! Absurd! Alexei was a brother-in-arms. Simla, 98. We charged the hillocks together." His voice boomed, but his eyes darted to the door. "Yes, we argued. Cards, you know. Biarritz, 5 years back. I lost 20,000 francs, vowed to pay. Tonight at supper, I cornered him. 'Alexei, old top, the eggs proceeds, spot of tin for me.' He laughed. 'Oh, pay or duel, Geoffrey.' Hot words, I'll grant. But kill? Never. I was waltzing with Baroness Olga when the scream came. Ask her." The monocle slipped. He fumbled it back. Ivanov leaned in. "Your hand, Colonel." Hargreaves extended his left with a grunt. Massive, calloused, the palm scarred from sabre practice. "Army man, left for the blade, but I swear later. Sergeant, note the laudanum vial in his jacket pocket." A nod from the guard confirmed it. "Debts make desperate men, Colonel. Dismissed, for now." Hargreaves sank back, mopping his brow. "Rotten show." Ivanov turned. "Madame Kuznetsova, you loathe the Romanovs. Your husband shot as a spy by Alexei's order. Speak." Olga did not flinch. She folded her hands, black jet beads clicking like rosary stones. "Loathe! Justice, Inspector. General Kuznetsov died for the people, hanged in a cellar, throat cut, ear to ear. Alexei signed the warrant. Tonight." I watched from the column. The egg gleamed, symbol of oppression. When he fell, I felt relief. The prince oppressed Russia. Now justice is served. Her eyes were steel, unblinking, her voice a velvet blade. "But I did not strike. I am left-handed, yes. Embroidery, shooting. Yet at midnight, I was by the Tsar's table, speaking with the Grand Duchess Elena. Ask her ladies." She slipped off her right glove, revealing a bare hand clean. The left glove, however, lay on the windowsill. Black lace, the cuff darkened with a rusty stain. Ivanov snatched it up, sniffing. "Blood or wine?" "Wine, from a spilled glass," she replied coolly. "During the quadrille." Ivanov bagged it. "Relief is motive enough, madame. Sit." Timothy half rose, then plumped down, curls dishevelled, waistcoat gaping. "Gosh, Inspector, don't look at me. I liked Alexei. Taught me chemin de fer last summer. But that dagger, I borrowed it. Afternoon for a prank. Hid it behind the billiard cushion, swear. Meant to leap out at Aunt Eleanor. Boo! Like at Eton Rag." He mimed a lunge, nearly toppling the samovar. "At the ball, I was dancing with Mrs. Van Hopper, the Blue Danube, then supper, quail eggs, yum. Back for the waltz, never near the dais." Ivanov's monocle glinted. "Borrowed, but where is it now?" Timothy paled. "Dashed if I know. Left it there, honest. Someone nicked it." He fumbled in his pocket, producing a pawn ticket, Paris for a gold locket. "Aunt Eleanor's, borrowed for polo last month. I'll repay." Eleanor sighed. "Oh, Timothy." "Left-handed?" pressed Ivanov. Both. Cricket, you know." Timothy demonstrated awkwardly. Ambidextrous, but clumsy left. Ivanov grunted. "Pranks kill, boy. Next, Lady Whitby." Eleanor straightened, sapphires steady. "Geoffrey's sister, Inspector, and Alexei's hostess. I invited him, old friendship from London 92. Motive? None. He owed me money too, 5,000 for Timothy's debts. But tonight, I partnered Sir Henry till 11:30, then supper. The scream, I ran from the buffet. My brother argued with him, yes, but Geoffrey's bluster, not murder." She glanced at Hargreaves, who nodded miserably. "And your nephew's wildness?" Eleanor's chin lifted. "Timothy's a lamb. The egg?" Alexei confided the auction plan. Insurance against Bolsheviks. I urged caution. Ivanov noted right-handed paw from the decanter. "Caution indeed. Sir Clithering?" Sir Henry cleared his throat, moustache bristling. "Retired yard. Man Ivanov, 20 years on the force. Arrived with Miss Marple. Motive? Zilch. I danced with Lady Eleanor, then whist in the gallery, Captain Voss and 2 Austrians witness. At midnight, lighting a cigar by the doors, Sergeant saw me." He was right-handed, pipe clenched thus. "But the angle, left to right behind curtain, loose panel there. Timothy found it earlier, someone slipped through." Ivanov nodded. "Known, Mrs. Van Hopper." The American fluttered. "Me! Land sakes! I twirled with young Timothy all evening, saw the egg, gorgeous, then scream, fainted dead away." Right-handed fan. Finally, Miss Marple. All eyes turned. Jane's needles paused. She smiled gently. "Jane Marple, Danby Mead. No motive, Inspector. Met the prince tonight. From my alcove, I watched. Crush at 12. Shadow thrusts from curtain. Killer vanishes into waltz. I rose, reached the body with Irina." She extended both hands. Knitter's fingers, the left dominant for purling. "Left-handed, yes, but occupied." Ivanov steepled fingers. "All claim alibis, yet one lies. The dagger, fingerprints tomorrow, gloves too." He eyed Olga's stained cuff. "Sergeant, search chambers. Notes found on prints, 2 threats, handwriting." A guard returned swiftly. "First note, matches Madame's script, slant left." Olga's mask cracked. "Mine, to warn him, yes, stay in Russia. But the second, upright bold, not mine." "Indeed," said Ivanov. "Second matches, Colonel's ledger." Hargreaves choked on cognac. "Mine, preposterous, quiet." Ivanov rose. "All confined to suites, guards posted. Dawn brings autopsy. The Tsar demands justice." As soldiers ushered them out, whispers erupted. Timothy to Eleanor. "Aunt, I'm for it!" Irina wailed to no one. Hargreaves cursed under breath. Olga glided past Miss Marple, murmuring, "Village eyes see deep." In the corridor, Sir Henry gripped Jane's arm. "Well played, old girl. But that glove stain, blood, mark me." Miss Marple nodded, tucking away her knitting. "Blood or not, Henry, it's the whose that matters. Like Mrs. Trotter's jam stains at the vicarage, always the poacher's wife." Eleanor clung to her. "Jane, you'll unravel it. Threads are there, my dear. Just need tugging." They parted at the Tsaritsyn wing. Miss Marple's door clicked shut. A maid offered chocolate. But sleep? Not yet. From her balcony, she watched patrols circle the courtyard, torches weaving orange webs on snow. Below, in shadow, Timothy slipping a package to footman Ivan, bulge like a flask. No, rolled paper. She drew the curtains, mind ticking, Irina's bruise, self-inflicted. Hargreaves's tremor, laudanum masking fear. Olga's warning, feint for attack. Timothy's prank, cover for theft. And that thrust, left to right, upward angle, short stature. No, curtain height suggested taller. Weaved hair in Alexei's coat, pulled right to left by victim's turn. Killer approached from front, stabbed as he pivoted. She smiled into the dark. Not behind, but before. Like the parsonage dance, steps hide the stumble. Dawn crept grey over the never. The killer slept soundly. Miss Marple did not. Chapter 7. Threads of Deceit. Dawn broke over the Winter Palace like a reluctant guest, its grey light seeping through the frost-veined windows of the Tsaritsyn wing. Miss Marple had not slept. She sat by her balcony in a woolen wrapper, a cup of cooling chamomile untouched on the malachite table. Below, Ukraina patrols crunched through fresh snow, their lanterns bobbing like will-o'-the-wisps. The Neva lay shrouded in mist, its ice creaking like old bones. A chilly business, she murmured to the empty air, but clues warm quicker than any fire. Her mind had laboured through the night, piecing the interrogation's fragments. Irina's bruise, too perfectly placed. Hargreaves's tremor, steadying when pressed. Olga's glove, stained but dry. Timothy's pawn ticket, crumpled like a lie. And that thrust left to right, yet the coat's tear pulled right to left. A contradiction unless the killer struck from the front, masked by the crush. Alexei had turned, perhaps to greet someone trusted. A soft rap at the door. "Miss Marple, Sir Henry, Miss, urgent." She rose, admitting him. His eyes were bloodshot, overcoat dusted with snow. "Jane, dashed cold out there." Ivanov's men found the dagger's sheath in Timothy's room under the mattress. "Lad's in custody now, blubbering about pranks. But I slipped the crime scene before they sealed it proper. Come, before they bar us." "Lead on, Henry," she said, donning her stout coat and brooch. "The morning air clears cobwebs." They descended by a servant stair, past yawning maids with mops. The Nicholas Hall lay desolate, chandeliers swathed in dust sheets, the jade pedestal roped off, the bloodstain a dark bloom on the parquet. 2 guards stiffened at their approach, but Sir Henry flashed a card. "Clitherin, Scotland Yard, Tsar's orders, 5 minutes." The men stepped aside. Miss Marple knelt by the stain, gloved finger tracing its edge. Not spattered, pulled neat. He fell forward, straight down, no struggle. She rose, peering at the dais curtain. Heavy crimson velvet, a loose panel at knee-height, as Timothy had shown. She slipped behind, cramped space, smelling of dust and wax. From here, the thrust angle was awkward, downward, not level. "No," she murmured. "Killer stood before him, in the open." Sir Henry nodded. "Agreed. Look, scuff mark here, boot polish, English leather, not Russian." He lifted the curtain's hem. A single emerald chip, winking in the gloom. From the hilt. Precisely. Miss Marple straightened, eyes sharp. "And this?" She pointed to the parquetry. A faint smear, reddish-brown, dragged 3 feet toward the buffet. Not blood, laudanum, sticky from a dropped vial. Kernels? Likely. But dragged after the fall by the killer to confuse the trail. A whistle from the corridor. Guards returning. They slipped out, hearts quick, in the field marshal's hall, empty save for a sleeping orderly. Sir Henry poured coffee from a thermos. "Jane, what next?" Ivanov's handwriting match holds. Olga's first note, Geoffrey's second. But why warn, then threaten? Miss Marple sipped, thoughtful. "A game, Henry. Olga warns to flush the plot. Hargreaves threatens to force the auction and his cut. But Timothy... She trailed off as footsteps echoed. Lord Timothy burst in, dishevelled, an Okrana cuff chafing his wrist. "Miss Marple! Sir Henry! They've locked me up! Say I killed him! But listen!" He fumbled in his boot, producing a crumpled pawn ticket. "Not mine. Dropped it last night, by the pedestal. Look, Paris for the egg's duplicate. Fabergé forgery, swapped years back." Miss Marple took it, unfolding carefully. "Maison Dubois, Rue de la Paix. 1 Fabergé egg replica, 5,000 francs, pledged by G. Hargreaves. Your uncle's hand," she said softly. "When? Last summer. Overheard him in Biarritz. Eleanor needs funds," he said. "Plan to swap the real star at the ball. Sell both. Harmless," he swore. "Insurance." Timothy's eyes welled. "I nicked the ticket to stop him. Hit the sheath too, thinking it a game." Sir Henry whistled. "Dash it, lad. Blackmail material." "Precisely why you're suspect," said Miss Marple. "But hold! Did you drop a package to Ivan the footman last night?" Timothy flushed. Yes. Bolshevik pamphlet. Found it in my trunk. Planted, I bet, to frame me." Voices neared. "Go, back to your cell," urged Sir Henry. "We'll vouch." Timothy fled as Ivanov entered, monocle askew. "You too, snooping, out!" They retreated to Eleanor's boudoir, a nest of rosewood and lace, samovar steaming. Eleanor embraced Jane, frantic. "They've searched Geoffrey's room, laudanum everywhere, and a ledger, debts to Alexei, 50,000. He's next for grilling." Miss Marple settled by the fire. Knitting resumed. "Come, my dear. May I see the prince's notes again?" Eleanor produced them from a lacquered box. Jane held them to the light. First, Olga's slant. Delicate, feminine. Second, Hargreaves's bold, military fist. But the paper. Wait. First note's watermark. Zarsko Selo Mill. Palace stock. Second, cheap newsprint from Warsaw. Sir Henry leaned in. 2 writers, agreed, but who struck? A knock. Madame Olga, escorted by a guard. "May I?" She entered, gliding to a chair. Ivanov hovered outside. "Miss Marple, I overheard the boy. The duplicate, Geoffrey's scheme. Alexei knew, confronted him at supper. Pay, or I expose you." Eleanor gasped. "Olga, why tell us?" Olga's eyes gleamed. "Because I wrote the first note. True warning. But the second? Geoffrey's. Yes, to scare Alexei into auction. I saw him drop the laudanum. Vile. Rushed to plant my glove on his coat in the corridor shadows. Frame him!" She extended her left hand, clean now. "See, no blood. Mine was wine." Miss Marple smiled gently. "Clever, madame, but last night, West Corridor. You hissed to the colonel. You promised the egg for the cause. Betrayal means death." He replied, "Olga, I'll get it after the sale." A plot together. Olga paled. "Lies, No, my dear. You borrowed Timothy's dagger, he admits. Left-handed thrust from the front. Alexei turned to you trusting, but the angle?" She rose, miming with her knitting needle. "Upward, from your height. 5'4", matches." Olga laughed brittle. "Proof? This." Miss Marple drew a tiny emerald chip from her pocket. "The curtain's find. From the hilt, stuck to your slipper's heel. I saw you wipe it in the powder room." Olga bolted for the door, but Ivanov blocked, seizing her wrists. "Taken, madame, for the revolution." "For justice," she spat. "Geoffrey promised the egg's gold to Lenin's men. Alexei learned, blackmailed him. I struck first." Sir Henry gaped. "But the glove on his coat?" Miss Marple's eyes twinkled. "You're faint, dear. Planted after, to muddy waters. But the laudanum trail led from the body to your alcove curtain. You dragged it, then fled." Eleanor clutched her pearls. Olga, why frame Geoffrey? He betrayed the cause, planned to keep half, like my husband, sold out for gold. Ivanov snapped cuffs. To the cells. Autopsy confirms. Thrust matches your fencing scars. As Olga was led away, cursing in Russian, Miss Marple turned to Eleanor. Not her alone, my dear. Call Geoffrey. The colonel lumbered in minutes later, unshaven, eyes wild. Jane, tell them you did not strike, she soothed, guiding him to a chair. Olga did, that's proven. But you wrote the second note, dropped the vial to mark the path. And this, she held the pawn ticket. Your duplicate, insurance for both eggs. Alexei found it yesterday, raged at you in the billiard room. You confessed to Olga, promised her share for silence. She turned, killed him to claim it all. Hargreaves crumpled, tears streaking his scar. God, yes, debts crushed me. Eleanor's estate, Timothy's follies, the swap, fool's plan. When Alexei threatened exposure, I panicked, wrote the note to force his hand. Olga, she vowed protection. Then the scream, I thought her work. Eleanor wept silently. Brother, oh Geoffrey. Sir Henry clapped his shoulder. Confess clean, old top. Yard'll speak for mercy. Ivanov returned, notebook ready. Hargreaves signed, voice breaking. All true. God forgive. Miss Marple folded her knitting. Human threads, Henry. Greed tangles with revenge, like the vicarage quilt, all patches of folly. By noon the palace stirred. Guests departing under escort. The egg revolted. Eleanor embraced Jane. You saved us again. Merely observed, my dear. Now, tea? Laughter broke the gloom. Outside, snow fell soft. The threads were tied. Chapter 8. The Winter's Truth. The grand hall of the Winter Palace, once a whirlwind of waltzes and candlelight, now stood stark and echoing under the midday sun. Its chandeliers hung swathed in Holland cloths, the parquetry floor dulled by a thin film of wax from hasty scrubbing. The jade pedestal had vanished, whisked back to the vaults by Okrana safesmen, and the crimson ropes lay coiled like shed snakeskins. Only the faint scrubbed outline of the bloodstain remained, a ghost on the wood, as if the murder had been a dream dispelled by morning. Yet the air held a chill deeper than the Nova's frost, and the house party assembled not in revelry, but in reckoning. Inspector Yuri Ivanov had summoned them to this very hall at noon sharp. His orders barked through every door. All present. The Tsar commands resolution. Guards in black tunics ringed the walls, rifles gleaming, while a stenographer hunched at a trestle table, pencils sharpened to points. The Tsar himself would not attend, his imperial duties called elsewhere, but his presence loomed, a shadow cast by the empty throne dais. Miss Marple entered last, her lavender taffeta exchanged for a sensible grey wool with a cashmere shawl. She carried her knitting basket, needles already clicking on the shawl's final border, a simple garter stitch to frame the eyelets. Sir Henry flanked her, pipe clenched but unlit. Lady Eleanor leaned on his arm, her sapphires dimmed by exhaustion. Colonel Hargreaves shuffled in irons, head bowed, the scar on his cheek a livid crease. Lord Timothy, uncuffed now, hovered pale and wide-eyed by his aunt. Countess Irina sat rigid on a gilded chair, her crimson gown wilted, emeralds plucked away by searchers. Mrs. Van Hopper fanned herself in the corner, whispering gracious to no one, and Madame Olga Kuznetsova, wrists manacled, stood defiant by a column, her black lace torn at the cuff where the stained glove had been. Ivanov paced the hall's length, boots ringing on the floor, his monocle polished to a mirror's gleam. The emerald chip from the curtain nestled in an evidence pouch at his belt. The pawn ticket and laudanum vial lay on the table beside the dagger, cleaned now, its blade filed for fingerprints. "Honored guests," he began, voice like cracking ice. "The Tsar's justice is swift. Prince Alexei Romanov lies in the Chapel Royal, his murderer among you. Autopsy confirms left-handed thrust, 5'4" height, fencing precision, motive, revolution and greed entwined. I name—" A footman burst through the south door, breathless, silver tray extended. "Urgent dispatch, Excellency, from the vaults!" Ivanov snatched the sealed paper, breaking the imperial eagle. His monocle slipped as he read. A rare flush crept up his neck. The Romanov star. Gone? Vault seals. Intact. Replica inside. Gasps rippled. Irina clutched her throat. Timothy gaped. Ivanov crumpled the note. Theft amid murder. But first, the killer. He resumed pacing, eyes sweeping them like a scythe. Madame Kuznetsova, your glove, your thrust, confess! Olga lifted her chin, chains rattling. Justice, not murder. The prince betrayed Russia. I struck for the people. Lies! Irina shrieked, rising. You struck for gold. I saw. Your hand on his arm, then the blade. Enough! Ivanov barked. Colonel Hargreaves, your note, your debts. Speak! Geoffrey raised shackled hands, voice hoarse. I wrote it, yes, to force the auction. But the dagger? Olga's. She vowed silence for a share, then turned. Eleanor sobbed quietly. Geoffrey, my own brother, Timothy piped up, trembling. Sir, she's lying. Uncle didn't know. I hid the sheath. But Olga, she took my pamphlet, planted it. Mrs. Van Hopper trilled. Oh, the Bolshevik, lock her up. Sir Henry grunted. Easy, madam. Threads tangle. Ivanov halted before Miss Marple, who knitted steadily, eyes mild as milk. You Englishwoman, village witch, all night you watched. Speak, or join them in cells. The hall fell silent, breaths held. Even the stenographer's pencil paused. Miss Marple laid down her needles with deliberate care, folding the shawl across her lap. She rose gently, a sparrow among wolves, and faced them all. Allow me, Inspector, if I may. Her voice carried soft but clear, like church bells over Danby Mead. Ivanov hesitated, then nodded curtly, curiosity outweighing pride. Thank you. Miss Marple smiled, turning to the assembly. A tragic night, dear friends, but truth like wool unravels clean when pulled right. Let us begin with the egg, the Romanov star. Not cursed, merely coveted. Prince Alexei planned its quiet sale. Proceeds for exile, shared with debts owed. She glanced at Hargreaves. To you, Colonel, 50,000 francs from Biarritz Baccarat, and to Lady Eleanor, for young Timothy's polo ponies and pawned tiara. Eleanor coloured. Timothy winced. But two sought it whole, continued Miss Marple. Madame Olga, for Bolshevik coffers, revenge for her husband's hanging, and Countess Irina, for Paris luxury as the prince's bride. Irina tossed her head. Olga sneered. Enter the notes. Olga's first, a true warning, stay in Russia, to halt the sale. Slant left, palace paper. The colonel's second, bold, upright, cheap Warsaw stock. The star will never leave, to fort it, securing his cut. Ivanov nodded, pouch in hand. Handwriting matches. Now, the duplicate. Miss Marple held up the pawn ticket. Colonel's scheme last summer. Fabergé forgery, swapped at the ball. Sell both, double gain. But the prince discovered it yesterday, in the billiard room. Pay, or I expose you, he raged. You confessed to Olga in the West Corridor. Promised her half for silence. Betrayal means death, she hissed. Yet you believed her your ally. Hargreaves nodded, Miserably. Fool I was. The ball, said Miss Marple. Midnight crush. You, Colonel, dropped the laudanum vial by the dais. Sticky trail to confuse. Then slipped to your alcove, flask in hand. Madame Olga borrowed Timothy's prank dagger, left-handed, her fencing style. But you struck first. No. She turned to Olga. You approached Alexei from the front, trusted widow. He turned to greet you, smiled even. Your thrust upward, level, between vertebrae. 5'4", perfect. He fell forward, no struggle. Olga laughed bitterly. Prove it! Miss Marple drew the emerald chip from her basket. This, from the hilt, stuck to your slipper heel. Wiped in the powder room, I saw. And your glove? Stained with laudanum, not wine. Grabbed from the Colonel's dropped vial to plant on his coat later, in shadows. Frame him for the revolution. Ivanov's eyes widened. The trail, from body to your alcove curtain. Precisely, but greed undid you both. She faced Hargreaves. After the scream, as chaos reigned, you seized the moment. Swapped the real egg for your duplicate, right under the guards' noses, in the press. Case under your cloak, easy for a soldier's sleight. Then slipped it to footman Ivan, your planted Bolshevik, for smuggling out. The vaults found the fake at dawn. Hargreaves blanched, slumping. How? The chip in the curtain. Your boot-polish scuff. English leather dragged the vial trail after her strike to her alcove. And Ivan? Timothy saw you pass coin, not pamphlet. Timothy gasped. Uncle, you? Sir Henry boomed. Caught, Geoffrey. Yard'll confirm the swap. Fabergé marks differ. Ivanov seized Hargreaves's arm. The egg? Where? With Ivan. Never wharf. Sleigh to Finland, he muttered, defeated. Soldiers dashed out. Sleigh bells clanged minutes later, recovered. Olga spat. Traitor! You promised the cause! You killed for it! Irina sobbed. My Alexei! Miss Marple resumed her seat, needles clicking. Human nature, Inspector. Greed tangles with revenge, like Mrs. Trotter's pilfering at the Danby vicarage. Jam stains on the poacher's wife, coins in the sexton's pocket. Simple, when seen. Ivanov snapped cuffs tighter. Both! To Peter and Paul Fortress. Trial at dawn. Guards dragged them away. Olga cursing. Hargreaves weeping. Irina fainted into Eleanor's arms. Timothy hugged his aunt, contrite. Mrs. Van Hopper dabbed tears. Jane Marple, you're a miracle! The Tsar's courier arrived as snow began anew. Justice served. Guests depart free. By dusk, sleighs waited in the courtyard. Harness bells jingling silver. Lady Eleanor embraced Miss Marple on the steps, sapphires restored. Jane, you saved us all. The egg returns to vaults. Geoffrey, mercy perhaps. Come again. Perhaps, my dear, but Danby Mead calls. Sir Henry handed her into the lead troika, Mrs. Van Hopper chattering beside. To the Orient Express! Oh, Jane, your next adventure. The prince's body lay in state below, but the palace glowed once more, candles lit for departing guests. Whips cracked. Sleighs flew through torchlit streets, turquoise domes vanishing in snow. Back in Danby Mead, 3 days later, Miss Marple sat by her bay window, Rufus purring on her lap. The blue shawl lay complete, folded neat. Mary brought tea in the Times, Romanov murder solved. English spinster unravels plot. Well, Rufus, she murmured, stroking his ears. Russia was chilly, sables and all. Bolsheviks howling like winter winds. But motives warm as ever. Greed in a palace, same as pilfering plums from the vicar's tree. The cat blinked. Outside, roses nodded in spring sun. Danby Mead hummed peaceful. Miss Marple took up fresh wool, soft pink for Mrs. Price. The world turned. Human folly endured, but truth it knitted tight.